I still occasionally hop on Tinder because, hope, romance, all that stuff that we all wish for. And I'm noticing that a lot of men are putting their height in their bios. And I think this is great. As someone who has been told that he takes tall photos, I get it. I'm only 5'7". I don't want anyone thinking that I am 6'2". Now, what cracks me up about people putting their height in their bios is that the people who are over 6 feet, a lot of them will put that they are the little spoon, meaning they want to be held. They might be a bottom, and that's totally fine. But say that. You're nobody's little spoon over the height of 6 feet, though. I mean, you're not even a big spoon at that point. You're more like a ladle for soup. Yo, what's going on? This is the Kevin Dwayne podcast, and I'm your host, Kevin Dwayne. Thank you guys so much for listening to the show, and the feedback you guys gave on last week's episode, E is for Empathy, has really warmed my heart. I'm glad that by me telling my truth and sharing my childhood traumas and history is inspiring you all to look into your own lives. That's purpose in itself, so I truly appreciate it. If you guys want to get in contact with me to send questions or feedback, please email me. Send it to kevindwayne@gmail.com. Make sure you follow me on social media. That's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. But thank you all for the reposts and sharing across your personal profiles. Every little bit helps, and so your support really gets the show out there. Make sure you also leave reviews on Apple because that increases exposure on their platform. But yes, thank you all so much. This show would really be meaningless if I didn't have great listeners like you all. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So let's continue our journey. I really feel like my guardian angel has just popped up in my life. She's been doing her task, but we haven't had our check-ins. It feels like she's just popped in my room and said, okay, I'm a little behind because of population. I'm sorry that I'm late, about 15 years too late. But now that I'm here, let's start pulling out everything we need to work on. We're finally having our consultation. And then she goes and pulls out a folder, or he or she, I think they're non-binary, pull out the folder, and it's the size of a fucking phone book, because that's how many things I have to unpack, because I'm human and I've lived a pretty full life already, but I have plenty to go. And so now we're trying to build stronger so that the latter part of my life is a little more emotionally intelligent. Last week, I talked about empathy. I shared about going to LA and having the conversation with my sister and how it broke me open and really made me reflect on what is going on in my life and certain behaviors I have and triggers and all of that. Well, let me tell you, the last week has been no different. I feel like every day I'm discovering more and more about myself, and it's just so odd that it's right now. But I also think it's because I am on leave from work and I have a lot of quiet time. And quiet time and meditation, all of that really brings your core out. That's the purpose of it. You're connecting to yourself to learn more about what? Yourself. So this week, we're going to talk about codependency. Codependency is defined by Oxford Dictionary as excessive emotional or psychological reliance on a partner or a friend, typically one who requires support on account of an illness or addiction. That's a little bonus section, but this happens in relationships all the time. I know that I am codependent. Do you know if you're codependent or not? Let's talk about it. Signs of codependency include, and this is from everydayhealth.com. There's also various resources on YouTube and, well, Google. And they all kind of line up if you want to look at it for yourself. I'm going to post links in the info box so that you can do your research and make up your own mind about what you think about this. But this is what I've gathered. Signs of codependency include difficulty making decisions in a relationship, the need for constant reassurance, Difficulty identifying your feelings, difficulty communicating in a relationship, which also means having a hard time saying no out of fear of losing the connection. Valuing the approval of others more than valuing yourself. Lacking trust in yourself and having poor self-esteem. Having fears of abandonment or an obsessive need for approval. If you identify with any of these in this list, you may be codependent. I know that I struggle with codependency. For the longest time, I didn't even know that there was a word for it. And that usually is the case when it comes to mental health. We often feel things that we don't know what it is. We just know it's a feeling. We know it's intense. We know we hate it. We know we don't like it there and we want to get out of it. But some people don't even know that they're even dealing with it. And I think that's the scarier part when you lack self-awareness and you're just going through this cycle. And that was me. I went through this cycle for so long. I think about all my relationships, all of them, the connections, the dating, the hookups, all of that. They all fell apart in a way because of my codependency. So now that I've defined what it is, and I know that it's definitely something that I struggle with, I've begun digging into my past and trying to figure out where the hell it comes from. Like, why am I like this? You know, why do I have this unhealthy dependence on relationships, even at my own cost? Even then, I also avoid conflict a lot. Once I attach to someone, especially intimately, it's like I become a different person. Like I lose a bit of my logic. And sometimes I just feel uncontrollable. Let's go back. So you guys all know I have a very colorful past. A lot of us do. A lot of us have a story. We all have a story. A lot of traumas can happen there. So I started thinking to myself, I was like, why is it I can be so insecure in relationships? Why is it that I always feel detached from people? And then once I get that attachment, I start freaking out and doing the craziest of things. So I spent a lot of time thinking about just being a kid. And I wasn't finding a lot of big trauma, if you will. And I was like, why do I have this constant need for affection or this constant need of being seen or insecurity? I don't get it. I mean, my aunt and uncle were there and they raised me. And then I thought about it. I said, but yeah, they were my aunt and uncle. And there was a time between being born and getting to my aunt and uncle. A lot of people don't realize emotional stability starts at birth, literally at birth. I'm reading this book called The Journey from Abandonment to Healing. It's by Susan Anderson. And she talks about how a lot of times when you deal with abandonment issues and codependency, when someone leaves you, breaks up with you, you often revert back to that of an infant or early childhood, or your birth, rather. And I'm going to take this quote directly out of it. It's pretty long, so brace yourself, but I feel like it's very important to the experience. So this is a quote from the book. It is possible that this experience is powerful enough to activate emotional memories stemming all the way back to your birth, bits and fragments of which have been encoded within the deep structure of your brain. The brain of a newborn does not yet have the fully developed structures it needs to record images of the actual events of birth. But the brain's emotional memory system is relatively intact at birth and lays down traces of early experience in the form of feelings and sensations. These feelings may be reactivated when an experience in your adult life bears an emotional resemblance to your birth. For most of us, birth involved a sudden drop in temperature, glaring lights, noise, and perhaps a spank to get us to take our first breath. When a loved one leaves you, a different kind of umbilical cord is cut. As when you were an infant, you've been subtly disconnected from everything that gave you comfort, warmth, and sustenance. The infant calms when it is wrapped snugly, first in someone's arms and then in warm blankets. It reminds the infant of the warmth of the mother's womb. But what about you? You have been cut off as well. Are you in no less need of comfort and the human warmth you are suddenly missing? Some abandonment survivors in the throes of a shattering crisis report wrapping themselves in a blanket and even rocking themselves to and fro. End quote. That blows my mind. While I was digging in my childhood looking for trauma, I didn't even consider my actual birth, which was traumatic in itself. I was actually born prematurely. I believe it was 6 months that I was born. Now, the circumstances surrounding this premature birth were not happenstance. They weren't coincidental. The labor was actually induced. So I literally, before my brain could fully develop, before I was ready to come out of my mother's womb, I was evicted. That's traumatic. On top of that, I didn't get a moment to even attach to anybody because when you're prematurely born, you're literally sent into ICU. So I had tubes in my body, blood transfusions, and all type of stuff just to keep me alive because I was underweight and not ready. No wonder I'm so anxious. No wonder I'm so codependent. No wonder I'm always seeking out connection. My developmental stages were ignored. I was a baby when I was given to my uncle. But who knows what happened? I definitely don't remember. Who knows what happened between my birth, the trauma of being in ICU and all of that stuff and getting me to regular health, and to when I got to my aunt. Those are very important times for the development of an infant. That's when you learn a sense of yourself. You learn where safety is. You learn connection. You attach. I did not receive that. And now I'm looking at my life like, fuck. This all makes a lot of damn sense. I've literally just been going through life seeking out this connection to almost a parental figure, really. Thank God for my friends. You all know Christina. That's my queen there. Poor thing. Mama has to reassure me about stuff all the time. And sometimes I didn't even realize I was doing it until now. I was like, damn, I actually rely on my friends a lot to kind of help me decide things. I'm very indecisive. I get very anxious about things. I procrastinate. I have a lot of things that are affected because of this codependency. When I got to adulthood, I kind of just faked it till I made it. Like I did enough so I could pay my bills, but I really just an anxious mess. And I didn't get it. I just thought, oh, this is just me. I'm just an emotional Pisces. But it's more than that. It's more than that. This all stems from how I came into the world. And on top of that, because of the switch off between my parents and my aunt and uncle, I think the baton was dropped rather. So a lot of Black families, especially older generations, really focus on, this is opinion by the way, really focus on food, shelter, education. Not enough, especially in this time, cared about mental health. I don't think anyone really cared about what I was feeling. No one cared about what I was thinking or maybe brain development or anything that could have gone wrong when I was born. Now, I don't know for sure. But I definitely remember not going to therapy. I definitely remember not being asked about feelings. It was literally about, well, he's now a healthy weight. He's eating. He appears to be smart. He appears to have it together. He's listening. Let's just move forward. But when I got to having interpersonal relationships, I was a fucking mess. An absolute fucking mess. Hell, I'm still a mess. I still struggle with these things, but that's because I didn't have awareness. But now that I have the awareness, I can move forward differently by going to therapy, by reading, by getting the resources I need for skills and ways to combat those feelings of high emotion. Really learning how to utilize logic and not have split thinking, this idea that I can't live without another person or I need someone else to survive, because logically I know that's not true. But something happens when I attach to people, my mind switches to that of a child. And it feels like that. When I get really emotional about something, I feel like a kid. It is the weirdest thing to feel when you are a 34-year-old man. It's so odd and it's very frustrating. It's very discouraging. And I've learned that a lot of my self-sabotaging habits come from this. Like when I get hurt, I tend to push the pain further inward. Now I'll express it, I'll journal, but there's still a part of me that feels like something is wrong with me that makes people not want to stay with me or attach with me. And I truly believe that comes from birth. No other explanation. Now, granted, there's a lot of other things that happen between birth and now that can solidify this. And I'll talk about that later with other topics of this whole process because we have a lot to go through. But when it comes to codependency, I'm literally linking it to how I came into this world. I didn't get the proper attachment that a child should have to his parents, guardians, or caretakers. Because I don't want to make it about biological, although I do have a theory about that. I do feel sometimes there is a connection because it's biological. Because you literally come out of the womb of your mother. So there has to be a connection there. So to not be able to link to her outside of the womb, that has to be traumatizing. I still appreciate my aunt and uncle for all they did for me. And I don't want to, number one, villainize anyone. And I also do not want to play victim. What I want to do is take this info and become better, have a greater understanding of who I am as a person, strengthen my emotional intelligence, and thrive. And ultimately, be able to have a very healthy relationship with another person. Self-awareness and action is what will get me there. I'm codependent and now I'm working with that. I'm working with that by, I joked about being on Tinder, but I decided to kind of take a break from sex, number one. It's weird saying this, but I'm actually celibate right now. I actually decided this a month ago. Yeah, a month ago, I was like, you know what? I have to stop giving my power away. Because the truth of the matter is, I lie a lot about my view. Like, I love sex. Sex is great. But I think I'm more nonchalant than I really am internally. I've learned to become numb to it. But I can't sit here and pretend like I'm not connected to people when I have sex with them. I had a situation like not too long ago where I felt that attachment and it got really, really weird because I was like, damn, this is supposed to be a hookup, but I'm really connecting to this person. And I just hate that feeling of being depleted when it's all over. I hate it so much. That yearning and that need and that wanting, first of all, wanting more sex and not being able to get it, but then also not being able to be affectionate and continue that connection. I'm like, you know what? I might be playing myself. Nope, I'm definitely playing myself. So let me just take sex off the table. The next person I have sex with will actually be a serious partner. We will have dated. We will have gotten to know each other. We will have committed. Because that's the only way that I am going to heal the way I need and stop this cycle. This cycle has to stop. And so right now, we're just focusing on being single. We're focusing on healing. We're focused on independence, really doing what I feel I need to do for me. So if I go through the signs of codependency earlier and start applying them to my life, this is what I come up with. I'm learning to identify my feelings and be honest about it, like really saying what it is I feel. Learning how to communicate when my attachment is really, really serious. Because I'll tell a friend the truth. I will tell a stranger the truth. I'll tell you all the truth. But when I catch feelings, it's like I go insane. I literally am afraid of losing that person. And it happens really, really early. And it drives me crazy. So right now we're working on being sure I know exactly what I want, making sure I know how to identify my feelings, learning how to logically work through those high emotion moments. I'm highly sensitive, and learning how to process, learning how to really just stop and say, all right, let's be logical about this. You may be feeling this, and there's nothing wrong with feeling the way you do because that's who you are. But let's also introduce logic and balance it all out. I have more trust in myself. Self-esteem is higher. I'm understanding that life is not so much black and white. Just because someone decides to leave you doesn't mean you're doomed. It also doesn't mean that something is wrong with you. They just decided that you weren't a fit for their lives, and that's completely fine. Now, this sounds all great right now in this podcast because I'm fine, I'm single, I'm not tripping on nobody, but I hope I can do the same thing the next time I truly fall for someone and I can process it. But I also want to manifest a long-term relationship that I won't even have to use this in the near future. That's where I am right now. So I'm working through codependency. What about you? What are your thoughts on codependency? Do you feel you might be codependent? Are there things that you can work on? I mean, definitely let me know. because I would love to hear from the audience, because this is something that I think a lot of people deal with. I look at a lot of people in my community that you see them popping from relationship to relationship, like serial monogamous, and it's like there's never a break for self. There's never any moment of reflection. And it's like you're running away from something. But I think that's because it's undiagnosed. It's no one ever mentioned it. No one ever explained what it is. They don't know what the feelings they are feeling are. This week is all about codependency. So that's all I got. I just wanted to pop in, but I appreciate you all. As always, make sure you guys are subscribed. Tell your friends to subscribe. And I will talk to you all next week. Peace out.